Welcome to 60 Minutes with a Woman, the podcast where we sit down with remarkable women. In each episode, we dive into their journey, the challenges, the triumph, and the lessons that shape them. Get ready for raw conversations, inspiring stories, and actionable insights to fuel your own success. Tune in because every woman's story deserves to be heard. Welcome to 60 Minutes with a Woman. Today, again, we have a special guest, Kassandra Alvarez. Welcome, Kassandra.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Kassandra, I'm going to start by introducing you. You are a board-certified behavior analyst, autism parent coach, and a best-selling author. Your book is called Guiding Lights, Navigating Autism with Empathy and Expertise. You work closely with parents of autistic children to help them understand better their child's behavior, regulate in difficult moments, and create more peace at home. Your approach is grounded, compassionate, and practical, centered on the belief that supporting parents is just as important as supporting the child. I love this approach. I can't wait for us to dig into that subject. Let's get to know you a little more to start with before we talk about what you do. Tell us more about your personal background, where you grew up, your upbringing, and maybe your early influences.
Yeah, so I am Mexican. So what that looks like for me is I was born and raised in the state of Texas. It's a border town and spent my whole life over there until I moved away to college. I was raised in a traditional family. I had siblings and aunts and uncles and grandparents and all of that. And I moved out of there and I moved to a different state. So now I live in Florida. And I feel like all of that has truly shaped me because there's not a lot of Mexicans here.
It's more Cubans and Colombians probably. Okay.
Yeah, Puerto Ricans, for sure, Colombian, like all that. Not a lot of Mexicans. It's very rare, but it's been very cool because I feel like culturally, you have that experience, right, from like being raised in a place where it's predominantly Mexican. And so that's kind of how like I got to the approach that I do now, because a lot of the things that we live them a certain way because of how we were raised. It's all like culturally inflicted on us, whether it be good or bad. And that's also an opinion, because to some people it may be good, to some people it may be bad. But yeah, that's a little bit about my background.
So growing up in Texas and then moving really offered you the opportunity to be exposed to different cultural heritages and habits. Do you feel that it shapes also the way you work today?
Yes, it really does. Yeah, especially being Hispanic in the United States. It just and also like Hispanic, but not really being Hispanic because I'm so Americanized. That's what people call me.
Okay. Who said that?
So many people. And because I speak fluent English and fluent Spanish, so it's like, you're not one, but you're not the other. So I'm like, I don't know, I'm just kind of existing in this country.
You are in the middle. I think it's a strength. Sometimes we want to belong to something. We don't realize that. And when you're a little bit in the middle, it feels like you're nowhere really.
Yeah.
And I was talking about that was a friend of mine who is from Albania and she's here in New York City. That's really, I think, it builds resilience and the strength that comes with, fighting for identity and fighting to find your place in the world. When you have this contradiction of being from somewhere and living somewhere else, I think makes people just work harder for their dreams.
Yeah, because like you said, you feel like you don't belong to either. So you're like, I have to belong somewhere because, right, that's what we want, is to belong.
There is no comfort zone. So you got to make it happen for yourself.
Yeah. And a lot of the times your dreams are your dreams, and your family has no idea what you're wanting to do because they're like, what do you mean you don't want to just work for the rest of your life? And I'm like, no, that is not what I want to do.
I like the subject, the fact that there is a clash in the mentalities and the expectations. Yes, it's I mean, the good thing is also we get to show them, maybe because also parents come from a background that is not as fortunate. So realities are not the same for their children who know it's doable. So when you get to show them that it's actually doable, once again, it's also a good thing for them because it validates the fact that he came here for a reason to give you and their children in general a better life.
Yeah. And I think too, are the way that they think about us, it's because that's what they know, like you said. And they really just want the best for us. So they think that if we go a different way, it's going to hurt us. So that's why I feel like that's how I see it, at least. And even like conversations that I've had with like my mom, it's, she doesn't say it, but it's very clear.
Yeah, like you said, they're trying to promote a safe space. This is what they know, so this is where they want you to be. But it's fun to once again take the best of that and take the best of the place where you are and just mix both and create a new reality. Even for when you have children, when you know children of immigrant have children, then you know it keeps on evolving differently and vice versa. So but that gives that gives us a good idea of who you are. I love it. Thank you for sharing that with us. And what did you study?
I have a bachelor's in psychology. I was always interested in that. Initially, actually, I was going to go into marine biology. I was always like a science girly. Transitioned completely, so studied psychology. And then I have a master's in special education with an emphasis in applied behavior analysis, which is the field that I study and has, you know, shaped into the business that I have now.
That's right. It makes a lot of sense also about the reason why you also took the turn in your life that you took. And I wanted to ask you about it. Was there a pivotal moment or something that led you to want to start working with um, children on the spectrum?
It wasn't a pivotal moment, I don't think, for me. Honestly, I was having a conversation with people online today and yesterday about how the field itself has such a like negative connotation because for for whatever experience they had, or maybe an experience of someone else that they know of, and now it's their experience too, even though it's not. But the reason that I went into it is because, and it ties into that, because I actually just wanted a different job,
Hmm.
and I had known about that field for a while. And I was always a person that said, like, I don't want children. I don't really like to hang out around children. But it turns out that it actually was just everything that I felt like I needed in that moment. Like, working with children was one of the best things that I feel like could have ever happened to me, because they they love so much. And I had never, like, no offense to my family or anything, but I feel like I had never experienced a love like a child can give you. And so, man, it changed everything for me. I didn't even know that. And because in my head, I was like, no, children, never. But as soon as I started working with them, man, it's just so fun. They're so fun.
They are children are really a blessing. They rely on us for so many things, and having somebody like you wanting to spend time with them and help them so they can thrive and hit their milestones. It's a true blessing too, and I want to thank you for that. Because I you love it, but I'm sure they love it even more.
Oh, listen, I was so proud of like the person that I am in the jobs that I've had, because I honestly became like one of the favorites in all of the jobs that I had. And just because like children like when you play with them.
Yes.
And I didn't know what play was until I started to work with children. And you start to get to know like what kind of play they like. And I was really good with the ones that liked to play like rough or liked like physical play, like being thrown up in the air or like being carried. And that was like my favorite type of play. But I also could play with like, you want to play like pretend and be, I don't know, a robot, and like let's do it, you know? So it it was so life changing for me starting to work with children because they're just, I don't know, they're such cool little humans.
Yes, they absolutely are. And you started your own business. So did you always have this entrepreneur mindset, or did it come later as you were working with autistic children?
Yeah, I have always been a person that I know what I want out of this life. I didn't know that I would turn into having my own business, but eventually, like once I started discovering that world,
Yes.
and spending time with the people that I was spending time with, I just realized that I wasn't connecting to them because I wanted more and they were okay where they were. And I'm like, well, there's got to be people like me out there. It's not like I'm not just a person that's, just this way and there's not anyone else like that out there.
Mhm.
So it I discovered people that were entrepreneurs and business owners and investors and all of that. And that's when I was like, I can do this. Like this is actually aligned with a lot of the things that I am. And I felt like I didn't know that world existed until I feel like I had no other option because I was like, I'm not like these people. Like, who am I like?
This is not fulfilling for you. It's just there is a space that need to be filled. I think it's the call for every entrepreneur. It's is there more? I'm willing to put in the work. I'm willing to hustle. I want to I want to make my work my passion, not just follow, instructions. I think this is what makes the difference between people who stick with their job and people who decide to become entrepreneurs. And everything is fine, obviously.
Yeah, and it's not for everyone, right? Like it for a while, even like when I first started, like you said, there's not a set salary. You're kind of just doing what you know to do and have strategies and systems in place that you know that will get you paid. But at the same time, you're also like, it's not sure. Like there's also that like, well, what if they don't pay you?
Hmm.
So yeah, it's challenging, but it's also, I feel like for me, like if I didn't take this route, I don't know what I would be because it wouldn't challenge me the way that this challenges me. I feel like I would just be, living every day the same and not really doing anything. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, it didn't challenge me. I was always a person that moved up so quickly, and then whenever I was at the top, I'm like, what now? Okay, we'll just get a different job and do the same thing. But after a while that gets really old. So yeah, I feel like I had no other option.
We are glad you did, because I know it's a mission of yours right now to what you do has become, once again, it was your vocation, but you've done an incredible work already helping many families. What is the thought behind your work? What is, now I said it was a mission. Do you want to define the mission of your work with children?
hmm So originally, I started working with children, and that's when I transitioned to being an entrepreneur. I thought I was going to be doing the same thing, but the more that I started even self development on myself, and whenever you start that journey, and people aren't going to take it with you all the time necessarily, but my mom, she was one of the people that decided to. She was like, I'm going to be better too. And so being able to have those like conversations, and I have a niece with autism, and she wasn't diagnosed until after I started working in the field. So it wasn't like something that's why I went into it. It just kind of happened. And so the reason that I just do what I do now, and I just want to help parents with children with autism.
Yes.
like better connect to their children, better be able to understand them, better be able to regulate themselves. And all of that starts with really understanding, like, hey, I have this trauma, I have this background, I need to heal from that to show up better for my child. And using the science that I know that works with children with autism, it helps because we not only help the family, we start there, but we also are able then to help the child. And so that's really like what my goal is to like help parents heal to that they can show up better for their child.
It's really beautiful. It's such a tricky and difficult situation, and parents tend to never put themselves first. Obviously, there is a lot of dedication into helping their children, but like you mentioned, they have to be okay to show up in the best possible way for their children. So,
Hmm.
um, what do you want to tell parents out there more about your approach and your program?
Yeah. So I work more than anything. My love for what I do is actually in the group coaching aspect of it. And I love that approach because it not only helps me reach more people, but it helps them build a community of other families that are also living a lot of the same things that they are. And so, right now, the program that I have is like a 6-week program. Um, and it's not ongoing because, I feel like it makes more sense to do it in like slower, like commitment time for the family because not every family has a year long to commit to something. Like it's just not reasonable time wise. Like they've got, a lot, there's stuff going on. But one day I'm sure like I will introduce that as well.
Hmm.
But we start off with really like understanding the triggers, like what triggers you, like what causes you to respond in a certain way that maybe you are not like proud of, and also what triggers your child to respond the way that they're responding that then triggers you. And so we start off there, and then we get to doing communication. So we start off, or we go into like understanding like communication because whenever a child is, the communication doesn't always necessarily mean that they're talking to us because some children with autism don't talk and they may never talk. So it's getting them to understand, like, okay, just because your child isn't communicating with you in the way that you hope that they will, and because every parent hopes that their child will talk to them one day, and it's getting them to understand that that could happen, but it also may not. And so, you know, handling that and working through that, and then also teaching them that, okay, your child is doing some of these things, and it may not be for whatever reason that you think, but it may be because they're trying to tell you something. So we really unpack the things that are happening in that behavior or whatever it is that's happening and have them understand what it is that they're trying to communicate to us.
Yes.
After that, and this goes on for 6 weeks, right? So every week we work on different things. Some other things that we work on are transitions. So better preparing the family and the child for a transition. Because with children with autism, a lot of the times, this doesn't apply to everyone, obviously, because it's a spectrum, but you have children that can't transition well. Like they don't tolerate change.
Hmm.
And so it's a very big thing for them because it shows up in a way that parents don't necessarily like. And that is because they're having a meltdown or they're doing something that's not appropriate because of the transition that's happening or the change that just happened. And so it's a lot of like those big things that parents are working with. But what I like about the program itself is that it's not like that's just the foundation of it, right? And we do talk about all of that because those are all things that help families, but also like if someone is going through something in that moment and it's not in the program, like I have them always like fill out a form, just like asking them questions about their specific situation, because with anything, it's not a one size fits all. So if they're going through something and they are okay with us going through it in our calls, then we'll go through it. And it gives everyone else like an opportunity also to learn, because even though it's not happening for every single family at that point, for example, like potty training, sometimes potty training can be very challenging for children with autism. And if someone is having a really hard time, we'll go through it. And it may not apply to everyone in that moment, but at some point it might, or it might help somebody else. And so that's what I really like about it, is like we can go through things together that they're going through in that moment. We have a foundation that we'll hit on, and they're able to build a community amongst themselves. And I always will encourage it. Like I'm make sure that everyone is active in the community, because I want for them to leave with not only the knowledge but also with a support system that they can text or they can call or have virtual coffee whenever they need it. So that's a little bit of my program.
It sounds amazing. It sounds amazing, not only because having children is very isolating altogether, but facing challenges beyond what most parents, have to go through. And sometimes not knowing if you do right, if you do wrong, or sometimes just, you probably need to step back and you want to scream at the sky and say, just give me answers, because it's demanding. Once again, you're very challenged, but at the same time, you want to offer the best possible life to your child. And knowing that other parents are in this situation, this community is everything. I will always say it, and the listeners hear me say that all the time. 60 Minutes with a Woman, it's all about building a village for a woman. This is what I wanted. I wanted education. I wanted to have information out there so we can all grow together. And this is true for any type of field or, sector of activity or reality, really, that people are going through. Community will help you get through things in a just easier way that you would do it alone, because alone is very challenging.
And like you said, like having children is very isolating, but having a child with autism is like 10x that. And a lot of the times, like some I know, like even for me, right? Like if I'm bored, I'll go to the store sometimes. May not buy anything, but I might. But I'll just go to the store just to get out of the house. Sometimes when you have a child with autism, you can't even do that because you don't want for them to have a meltdown in the middle of the store and have people stare at them. And so a lot of a lot of the times, it's not even most of the time, they don't leave their house. So they don't go to other people's houses because of the behavior at another person's house. So it's isolating times like 10.
Yeah.
And so sometimes the best thing that you can do is phone a friend, get on a Zoom. And sometimes too, they don't like some when I have families join or I'm talking to them before it's starting, they're not open to that because they don't think that it'll help them. But I'm like, just try it. Like, you know how you're talking to me right now on Zoom, and I will talk to them like this, and they're like, yeah. I'm like, how does it feel for you? I'm like, well, they like to just talk to me and vent and whatever it is that they need to do in that moment. I'm like, imagine another mom. You can do that with another mom too, and they're gonna listen to you because they're on the same boat that you are.
That's right.
And so it's really like shifting their perspective that they're not open to it, but I'm like, it could also be the best thing for you.
It's I see it as you need to be convinced by someone else just because you're used to this reality and you're comfortable there, not in the best way, but in a way, so taking you out of that takes a little push. It's awesome that you're there to listen to them and be supportive. And I want to ask you a question. All right, this is really, we talked about the question I was going to ask you today, and I told you about how little I know about autism. I know there are a lot of people out there who are on the same page just because it's not something that is talked about enough. Uh, would you mind educating us on first of all, what is your own definition of autism?
Yeah. Autism is an a developmental disorder, disability, however it is that you want to call it. And it can affect the way that people function in society by, and what I mean by that is it can affect like communication, it can affect social skills, it can affect your daily experience. Sometimes too, people with autism feel things so much more than you and I maybe do.
Mm-hmm.
It's like being an empath, but different and more feelings. Where if maybe something doesn't happen the way that they want to, the behavior that happens because of that is so much more intense, and the regulation is not able to happen as fast as it would with like a person like you and I. Um, and so that's what my definition of autism is.
Can I dare ask you if what kind of physical, biological reason provoked that?
Well, there's not a lot of, that's just a very sensitive subject for a lot of people, by the way. Just want to put it out there, but I'm like super okay answering it with my personal experience.
Mhm.
There is not anything out there that is like absolutely 100% this causes autism.
Really?
No. For whatever reason that is, there is, um, the world may never know. But as of right now, there is not. There are a lot of theories and there are like a lot of scientific research that has been done that says autism is caused by this. But then there are also like the opposite, right? Like there's research that's fighting that. So, for example, like vaccines is a big one. People say that it's caused by vaccines, but there's also research on the other side that says, well, actually, this is a research that we've done and it's not. I think, in for everyone, my own experience and working with the families that I have, the background that I have, um, I feel like it has something to do with like our how do you say it, like
Hereditary?
yeah, like hair,
Yeah.
yeah, something like that. But it's not like a chromosome or anything like that. Like it's not any of that. I just think that if, because there's a chance actually, like if you're,
It gets passed down through the genes, yeah.
but a lot of the times too, it's not seen that way because the parent was never diagnosed. And that is, the chances of that happening are very high because back then autism wasn't as known, it wasn't as tested, it wasn't looked for as much as it is now. And so it happens in a lot of the families I even work with is like, well, my child has autism. I have a lot of the traits that they have. Is it possible that I am too? I'm like, you know, it's very likely that you do have autism. You just didn't know it because it wasn't tested for it, but your child now has it and you're now questioning it. And so that's like literally why I feel like it does have something to do with like the everyone's like background, is because of that. But it also may not be that. It just might be like a coincidence.
It could be many things. Thank you for diving with us into this conversation. I mean, into the subject because I mean, I didn't know it was controversial. I thought it was set in stone by medical studies, and I realize now that we are dealing with something that is so broad,
Hmm.
right? And this is just going to take me to my next question. Then, how to recognize signs, or what are the signs that parents should be on the lookout for, to when having a baby, to maybe suspect that this could be autism?
So some signs of autism are, especially when you're a baby, the the babbling and the communication, is, it happens occasionally, and it stops maybe at some point, or they stop babbling, or they stop words, things like that. That's a sign. So if all of a sudden they were and now they're not. Another sign is that the connection that a parent and a baby have to each other typically is like, you know, there. It's with a neurotypical child, but whenever it's a child with autism, sometimes there's not a connection, the baby to the parent. Like they don't really care about the parent, is more than anything what I'm trying to say. It's very like aware that, because parents love their babies and it doesn't take away the love from them, but the baby doesn't really care to be with them. Like they're fine. Something else are like, this is just like infants, right? Uh, the contact, the eye contact with the family. A lot of times babies look at people like it's just a milestone, right? Like they start looking at people. And sometimes with children with autism, they don't. So they're just kind of like looking like in space almost, like just not aware of like what's in front of them. Those are some really big signs in infants. As they get older and they start getting in like that 1 to 2 age, which is where pediatricians are more likely to do a test on them, is they start playing with things and they're hyper fixated on a certain part of the toy. So let's say you have a car, and we all know how you are supposed to play with cars. Granted, that's subjective too, because you can play with it however you want to play with it. But in children with autism, they may be hyper fixated on like the wheel,
Okay.
or like they might just be like playing with it like in the air or things like that. That's like hyper fixated on it for a certain reason. Or another thing that you see sometimes is like they put it somewhere and they just like want to watch it fall. Those different things, is those are all signs. Another one is like, and this one is very, I feel like you see this one everywhere, right? Is like they start lining things up, or they're very like only want to play with like a certain type of toy. So let's say their safe toy is like a dinosaurs, and they only want dinosaurs. They don't care about anything else. For example, my niece, her toy, and she's always been like this, is Mickey Mouse. She doesn't care about any toy but Mickey Mouse. That's the only thing she wants.
Okay.
And those are all like really big signs. And also like, you start to notice whenever they're a little bit older, the lack of communication sometimes, the lack of spatial awareness, the lack of that connection to you, that increases. Um, and those are all like the biggest signs to look for whenever you are questioning if a child has autism or not.
And you just talked about tests. What you said that there will be, so the tests are, they test the intellectual, the cognitive and motor skills, or is there any type of other test that can be done?
The main ones are, they do like questionnaires, and then they do, some psychologists or psychiatrists do this, but some don't. There is an in-person test. That in-person test I feel like is the best measure, and I feel like everyone should do that, but some psychologists don't. It's just their nature of working. For example, like the way that I assume that it's done is like if they see a child that they know for sure has autism, they won't do it sometimes. But I feel like it should still be done. But ultimately, it's up to them, and they know a lot more about them. I do have experience in doing the test, and I've done it with like level 1 through level 3 children. But yeah, it's questionnaires, and the questionnaire talks about everything, like your background, uh, their behavior, how they connect to you, what they do when something happens, like those changes I was talking about. It asks about that, um, different things like that that like show up in a child with autism, what their behavior looks like, how long does it last, can they communicate with you, how are they socially, and then the in-person test tests a lot of those things. So there's parts where it talks about like communication. There's a part where you're like uncovering a toy and it makes a lot of noise, and it's like, how do they respond to that? Because something Like you and I probably are going to be like, okay, but sometimes a child with autism has no reaction to that. And it's just like because they're not aware of it or it doesn't like affect them. And then it tests like changes happening. So removing toys, removing toys is the big one, like a big trigger for some children.
It's
Like
like object permanence.
yeah, for
Okay.
some, for all children, I feel like it is a trigger. Like they don't want, like that's my toy. But in children with autism, like I said, like the feelings are that much more intense. So if you ever remove something or you block something from happening, they get really upset. It's just like even more, yeah. And so that's a lot of like what the tests for. And I was saying earlier that some psychologists won't test until they're maybe like one or two. Typically, it's like 18 months where they're like more inclined to test for autism, just because all the signs that I talked about when you're an infant, they could like meet a milestone and then not do that. So it's just more developed, I feel like is the word as to why they test later on.
You mentioned level one, two, three. What does that mean?
Those are the like the diagnosis. Whenever you get a diagnosis, they either label you as level one, level two, or level three.
It's the intensity.
Yes, yeah. So level one would be like you're moderate, don't need a lot of support. You just have the diagnosis. A level two would mean that you need a little bit more support, and then level three would be like some more substantial support that you're going to need and are exhibiting. Yeah.
Does autism provoke a delay in the cognitive and motor skills, or maybe just only in the cognitive skills, or is it's not a delay, it's just something completely different?
I feel like that depends on who you ask, but I feel like from my experience, I'd say that autism doesn't really cause a delay. I think that it's just that they have autism and the chances of them being delayed in a lot of different things are going to happen. Sometimes not though. Sometimes they're going to be, in all of the different types of milestones that are um, out there, they might be very strong on one and not on the others. And so it can be, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they will.
Okay. It varies from a child to another enormously. This is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. And for example, like another very big thing that I saw one day and I was like, how is that possible? But it is. So I had a child that I was working with. You have like labeling and you have listener responding, which labeling just means like if you have a picture of a car, you're asking them to tell you what it is. And listener responding would be like you have pictures on the table and you want them to touch whatever it is that you're asking them to touch. So, for example, you have, let's see, 6 pictures and you want them to touch car. So you tell them, hey, touch the car. But some children can do the listener responding and they can't label, or they can label and they can't touch the car. So it's so different and it looks so different in every child.
It's I think it helps me right now, but I think it will help a lot of people also understand what autism really is. I love that we are digging this deep once again into this conversation. It's a privilege to have access to somebody who is so knowledgeable on the subject, and understand better. I just feel that it will raise so much more awareness. I want to ask you also about the misconceptions about autism. I don't have any in mind, to be honest, but I know there are a lot out there.
Uh, One of the biggest ones that I get asked a lot about is my child gonna have to depend on me the rest of their life? And the answer to that is maybe, because it doesn't mean that they are, but if they also like can be fully independent. And I feel like because everyone has their own experience with autism, whether they're really familiar with it or they're not, or they know of someone, it's different experience for everyone. But because maybe they see that their let's say like a friend's child has autism and they are going to be needing their parent the rest of their life, doesn't mean that your child will. Like,
Yes.
it depends for every child because, like I said, like there are some level three people that are going to need support the rest of their life. Um, but it doesn't necessarily mean that all level three are going to, because you can teach independence to a certain extent to all children. It's just a matter of you being willing to teach it. Because whenever you're teaching all of those skills, it's not easy. It's frustrating because whenever you have a child with autism, they may not want to do things. They may want to do things the way that they want to do things, and so it adds to that like, oh, I have to do this with them. But it's like, but if you don't, then the chances of them having to depend on someone the rest of their life then increase so much more. So that's a very big misconception. Yeah.
That is, I had not thought about it, but it makes a lot of sense. Um, it's most definitely a challenge to push yourself trying to teach something that your child doesn't want to learn. But most definitely, independence is also, I think, happiness for the child at some point, because in adulthood, they will probably realize that they're highly dependent on their parents, and it's not as satisfying when you're an adult, especially if it creates frustration long term. So, what's out there for parents? What kind of school? I mean, you were there, so that's
Yeah.
one thing.
Yeah. Right.
Yes, and but related to education once again, or physical therapy, or maybe even who knows, activities. How about that? Like, are there places, centers where family can turn to?
People with autism, there is a lot more help whenever they're younger. And it actually is really sad. Like there is a very big gap in this world of
I didn't
support.
know about that.
Yeah, it's huge. And different. I could talk on this forever. It's just so like I'll touch on some things, but whenever you are like school aged, you like let's say you start therapy when you are um like 2 or 3. Whenever you become school aged, it changes so much because you're now going to school full time for the most part. Some states have different laws where they don't have to, and they can be excused. It counts as like a medical reason why your child is not in school so much, so it doesn't count against them. But
Hmm.
it's a lot less therapy that there are being provided. And then when they become like adolescents or even adults, there is even less support for people. I know like a lot of parents that I have worked with in the past, they look for social skills groups, which mean like someone organizes an event for children with autism that are between the ages of, let's say, like 10 and 20 or 10 and 18. And it doesn't exist. It's very rare, actually, if it does.
That's
Yeah,
frustrating.
it's sad. There is a huge gap in this world, and the reason that this is my opinion on it, right? Like the reason that most of the people that are out there to support people with autism are focused on the younger ones is because of insurance, um, and because of like there is money to be made in that world. Just the reality of it. Um, so it's a lot easier to make money whenever you are going through insurance, even though that's a whole fight in itself. Like working with insurances is a whole fight, can be so bad for families. They're just waiting for services for so long because there's not anything available because of the insurance that they have. So that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, it's once you have those social skills um, groups that they're looking for, a lot of times it's going to be have to be paid for out of pocket. It's unless like the insurance has like certain provision where they can pay for it through it, or like an HSA or something like that. But it's just very rare for that to exist. And what I see a lot of is sometimes people with autism families are lower income, like that just happens. And so even that whenever they're that, it's even less support for them. So it's the support that's available for them is really good when they're little for the most part, but then it just gets even less when they're um like like middle, like the teens, and then into adults it's even less. Supports do take place at school, and especially if you go to a really good school where you work with really good people that are willing to help your child, but it just depends on what school you go to.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what's out there. And then for families, there are supports like groups and stuff like that, like in schools and organizations that have them, but it's not a lot. There's not a lot out there. And people have to know of them, right? So, and you have to be aware that, hey, maybe I could use that. And a lot of times people are so focused on getting help for their children that they don't even think that they need support too. So, yeah.
Do you also work with older children?
I don't work with the children anymore. I work more with the parents.
You focus more on the
Um,
parents now.
yeah,
Okay.
I have some families that I'm talking to right now that have children that are like in the ages like 20s and things like that. So yeah, if they're going through something, I would love to support them. It's just a matter of like I said, like sometimes they want to help their child so badly that they're not even aware that, hey, maybe you might need help too. And not only with your child, but like also like how are you managing to live? Like how are you going through day to day, all of that? Like, and sometimes too, like you're focused on the support for your child, but it's like if you just nurtured yourself and worked on yourself a little bit more, you would feel even better showing up that maybe you would be okay, you know? So that's like what's out there for families. Yeah.
Oh, I really love it. Thank you so much for that. Because, I mean, once again, we don't realize how much parents need to be supported as well. Right. And not only that, but like we just said, now there is no more age restriction or preferred age group age that you work with. You work with parents, and it just the benefit of working with parents get passed down directly to their children. So
Exactly.
if you're okay, I would like to dive more into the specifics of how you help parents. Um, for example, how do you help parents accept the quirks and mood swings of their children?
This is where like the side of like self-development comes in. Yeah. So sometimes whenever you're not accepting of the way that they are and the person that they are, meaning the quirks and the stims and the lack of communication, that just means that you have set a certain expectation for them that they may not be able to ever sustain.
That's a strong statement. That's very powerful. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like I said, like that's where the self-development comes in because it's it's not about the expectation that you set for them. It's about accepting them for who they are and how they are. And that, it's like, okay, why do you have that expectation for them?
That's right.
And unpacking that is where all of the childhood wounds come up and the background and the cultural and so it's
Right,
really like,
right.
yeah, and so that is where the power of the work that I do is in, because and it's like also like with accepting the diagnosis too, it's like also because you set an expectation for your child and they didn't they're not going to be able to meet it possibly, right? So you expect it for your child to be a certain way and you want them to be that way so badly, but they may not, you know. So
That's a tough reality. Thank you for responding this openly and honestly about that subject.
It's true for every person on this earth, not just parents with children with autism, but it's even more present when you have a child with a disability because the way that you are going to have to show up for them is going to be so incredibly different than it would be if you didn't have a child with a disability.
Wow. It really says a lot about the work that needs to be done internally as much as um supporting your child with, their particularities. Or it's true, everybody goes through having parents with expectations. I just somehow did not realize how much of a burden it would be for a child with, a special needs. So
Yeah.
really cool that we talked about it. And how do you help parents figure out what triggers their children, and what, and on the contrary, also how to soothe their children?
With how to figure out what their triggers are, this actually is part of the science, right, that I studied. It's figuring out what like the ABCs of the behavior are. So like what happened before and what's happening after. And that's how we'll be able to figure out like why is the behavior happening. So that leads into more science, right? Like there are four functions of behavior. There is attention, because we want attention from something or someone, because we want access to something, because we want to something feels good to us, and then I'm because we want something. Or like access can mean like just anything, like maybe we want to go outside, but a tangible could mean like we want food or something like that, we want a toy. And so those are the four functions, and so figuring out like which of those functions the trigger is falling into, and then we can work on it according to that trigger,
Okay.
that function. Yeah, and so it's figuring out which one of those it falls under, and the way that you work on it then. Um, this is also a very controversial topic for people out there because um, typically, like when a behavior is has being the function of attention, the way that you decrease the behavior for the most part is you don't give it attention. However, sometimes you have to. You don't want to just ignore your child. You want to figure out why it's happening, finding a way to comfort them that's appropriate, that you can also help them decrease. And that's going to be very individualized, right? Like it's not going to be the same for every child. And every parent is so different too, that maybe the way that I'm recommending, they're like, I don't feel comfortable doing that because I know that it's not going to help. So for some parents, like, they're like, I cannot have my baby screaming. Like, I can't do that. And as a person that works with them, I have to respect that. And then some parents are like, I'm not going to give them any attention. What do you mean? They're screaming. And it's like, well, I have to respect that too. So it's very individualized to the parent, to the family, the way that their family is set up. And then going, doing my best to help them, like, hey, well, this is what could help. This is what probably is not going to help. And then figuring out a way that works for everyone so that we can either decrease or increase the behavior, however it is that they want it to.
Is there a safe way to always succeed in soothing the child, or it varies always?
It depends, because even the behavior, right? Like maybe they want something at a store, and it's going to look different every time. Sometimes they will accept the comforting and like you telling them like, "Hey, you're okay. I'm here for you." Sometimes they won't. So it really just depends, but it's also like being sure in yourself that whatever you do, the outcome is going to be okay. So it also goes to that too, like you as a parent have to be comfortable in the decision that however you decide to parent them in that moment and comfort them in that moment or not comfort them in that moment, you have to be sure in yourself for doing that too. Yeah.
I mean, it's never easy with children in general. There is no magic recipe, or um but I figured maybe there was some maybe playing a song works?
Yeah, like I actually have a child that I used to work with him. Whenever he started to become really upset, he could potentially like become very aggressive. So we always like anytime we notice that start to happen, we try to like back off for a little bit. But there was a song that he really liked that maybe I'd say like 80% of the time he would be okay. But then again, like that 20%, it may not help.
Do you want to tell us more about improvements that you've noticed in a case, not in general, but let's pick one where you could say, all right, here is the progress that has been made, here is what have been done along the way, and what's planned for the future.
Yeah, some of my favorite cases to talk about are honestly the ones that advocate and I've been able to work with, like families, to start implementing some sort of self care, start making sure they're like paying attention to themselves too, and not just like wholeheartedly focus on the child. And it's because, and I love to talk about them because it just shows like whenever you nurture and care for yourself, your child also makes progress, even though it has nothing to do with each other.
Yes, yeah.
And so one of my favorite ones that I like to talk about is I had a child that he was potty training for a very long time. I'd say like a year. He just would not get it. And so whenever I started working with them, I was like, well, how long has it been? They told me, and I'm like, that's a very long time. Have you ever considered like stepping away from it for a minute? And they're like, well, I don't want to because they're going to lose the progress. And I'm like, well, it's been a year and they haven't made any progress. Potty training can take a year, but if they haven't made any progress, then the chances of them not being ready, us not being ready, are very high. Are you okay if we just take a step back from it? They agreed. In that moment, I was like, what do you guys like? What are you doing for you? What do you do for you? They're like, well, I don't. I go to school. I'm hang out with them. I'm like, okay, well, what if we tried, you know, doing going for a walk even like go for a walk maybe every week, make it a point to just go out there, disconnect, take your child with you. He loves to go for walks, like he loved it. Just go, don't be on your phone, just go do something that you can connect with the earth, whatever it is. Just start doing something and then we'll start adding more things. And so we started with a walk, they were doing it. After that was they were doing well with that, they were consistent. We added more things, she started doing more for her, making sure that she did stuff for herself, whether that be before or after the child is asleep. And then I'd say like 3 or 4 months of that, we then talked about maybe putting potty training back in. And the reason that I decided to ask that question is because I noticed she was so much happier, she was so much more talkative. Whenever you would ask her questions before, it was just like very short, very like the tone was very different. So you start to notice these things, and I was like, hey, are you ready to potty train again? She was like, no, I think I'm good. Like, just like a whole conversation about it. And I'm like, perfect, let's start it. I'm like, let's start with taking him maybe like every hour. And so they did. And within like 2 weeks, he was fully potty trained, going by himself, like literally in a underwear, just completely potty trained. And it wasn't by accident that she was so much more present. She was so much more willing to follow the routine. Like it was because we did all those things for herself first that the child was potty trained. Like it's not by accident. She showed up so much better for him, and within 2 weeks he was good.
She allowed herself to recuperate the way she needed. Would you recommend a rotation of parents interacting with children to allow them maybe to get this time for themselves, and like you said, come back and show up better for their children? Do you think that would be something that makes sense for parents?
Yeah, it depends on what you can do. Sometimes you won't have access to another person or anything like that, and it'll just be one. But yeah, but I always recommend like wake up a few minutes earlier than you normally do. And if you do already wake up before your child, don't wake up in a reactive manner. So don't wake up just tackling everything on your to-do list. Give yourself a few minutes to breathe. Like give yourself a few minutes without your phone. The phone nowadays is like the biggest obstacle in a lot of things. Give yourself some time to just be with yourself, like take a few deep breaths, stretch. Don't wake up and just all of a sudden tackle your to-do list because then you're going to wake up in a reactive manner and that already you're not showing up in a good way, in your best way at least. And then if you can, like the easiest things are in the morning and at night after they go to sleep, is making sure that you take some time for you in the afternoon too. Um, yeah. And once you start practicing that, it gets easier because it's not going to be easy at first. Like for nobody, it's easy to take care of themselves. Like it's just so real. We are raised in this like go, go, go world, but slowing down is the best thing that anyone could do for themselves.
Well, that's very beautiful. It's true in for everybody in general, but it's even more true when you have children that really count on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. What would you suggest to parents who would like to bond with their children in another way than cuddles, for example, or physical touch, because the child is now willing to?
My biggest recommendation to families is to follow their lead. So if they are playing with something in the moment, granted, some children will not let you play with what they're playing with, but sometimes like just joining them on their play will help build that connection. Um, if they're like ever doing something that's like silly, like maybe they're jumping and running around and things like that, just join them. I so sometimes like as adults, we're like, no, but I'm not going to do that. Like that's children. I'm like, but if like just try it and just look at the smile that they have because you just joined them. It's because whenever I started working with kids, I felt the same. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. That's dumb. But they're so happy. Like,
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. I love the therapeutic side this conversation is taking, because once again, it's I often say that, but it's the small things that make a huge difference sometimes. Um, we go through headaches of finding out exactly what could work or change our lives, whereas going back to the basics, or doing simple things once again, is the right way to or achieve any goals you might have in mind, and any inner peace you might be looking for. um, Kassandra, I want to ask you one more question. I kind of know the answer, but if there was one takeaway today from this conversation, that you want parents to understand, what would it be?
it's not a direct to anything I said, but it relates. Um, Doing more is not always the most beneficial thing that you are going to do for your child. Sometimes you need to do so much less. And it takes a mindset shift to recognize that. But having them in all of these different things sometimes is not going to be the best thing that you can do for them. Sometimes it's just allowing them to be who they are.
I didn't know you were going to say that, but I love it.
So funny. It's just so important, like to even have them be aware of that. I think because sometimes, especially with a child with autism, they think that they need to be doing all these things for them, but it's like mm, just try slowing down for every once in a while.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Cassandra. It's really inspiring. I'm really hoping that everybody got the best of our conversation. And how can we reach out to you?
So I have main access conversation wise to social media. So on Instagram and TikTok, I'm most active. And the usernames for that is Prompt Path. So PROMPT PATH. And send me a message. I have like my contact email on there too. So if you ever feel like you need to send me an email, there's the option to do that as well.
They can have a consultation with you based on.
Yeah, yeah. It's all of the links are there if they want to do reach out and are interested in or just have any questions. Like sometimes they just have a question. Like that's fine too. I'm super open to having the conversation with them. Yeah.
That's awesome. For people who didn't have a paper and a pen, I will write everything in the description down below. I always say that, but you can reach out to the guest right there. So please don't hesitate to scroll down, write her name and her information, and take the shot. Once again, I always say that too, but it's true. Our guests are people who want to spread their message. They're here for you. And the purpose of the podcast is understanding how true and honest she's in her work. And if you haven't understood that by now, well, make sure to reach out because you're going to be missing out. Really, Kassandra, this podcast was long due, and I want to thank you a million times for being here, once again, making sure that your message is being heard, and showing up for people, really, and making sure they're supported. Thank you so very much. It was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode. Until next time, stay bold, stay brilliant, and keep building your own success story. If you loved what you heard, be sure to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it.